Hey, it's nice to have you here again. Let's take a look at our Poison Assassin build. Blade Vortex is a physical spell that creates multiple ethereal blades that orbit around your character, dealing massive damage based on the number of blades spawned. At maximum efficiency, they hit almost 8 times per second, which is great for inflicting massive amounts of poison stacks on your enemies. As an assassin, you get increased poison duration for every poison inflicted recently, which is a very important multiplier for this ailment. You can also scale them through critical strikes, which is rather unusual for a damage over time build. You can easily sustain 10 blades at all times thanks to the Unleash support, but you can comfortably clear maps with just a few of them. To make your map clear better, you should use the Obliteration Wand, which grants you a 20% chance to explode enemies with chaos damage on their death. Physical-based spells are particularly strong for poisons, as you can get tons of extra chaos damage at a low cost, for example with the Ming's Heart Rings. You can also use 2 Cold Iron Point daggers that grant 3 levels for all your physical skill gems, which can be beaten only by the craziest rare items available out there. With 1 unique amulet and a few points on the passive tree, you can reach a very high critical strike chance on your Blade Vortex. The poisons applied with critical strikes can get crazy amounts of damage multiplier at a very low investment. As an assassin, you don't have much access to defense. You will receive 20% reduced damage, but only if there are more than 2 rare or unique enemies nearby. You will evade most of the incoming attacks and suppress most spells, but you cannot do much against physical damage that goes through evasion. You could use the Determination Aura, but without any armor on the passive tree, it won't make a big difference anyway, so it is better to use Purity of Elements to get rid of all elemental ailments instead. The clear speed is very good. You have easy access to 2 sources of corpse explosion that also can inflict poison, leading to satisfying chain reactions. The build is focused purely on gaining damage, so overpowering your opponents shouldn't be a problem. This setup is very cheap to get started. With just basic rare items and some common uniques, you can easily farm tier 16 maps on the first day, but it won't be deathless. There are a lot of unique items you can use with this build. Most of them will greatly improve your damage in the early stages, but some are great all the way to the endgame. You should look for useful corrupted implicits on them, especially on the most cheap ones. The Cold Iron Point is the best in slot dagger for this build, and you can dual wield them for maximum DPS. They will add tons of damage at a very low cost, and the downside is negligible since you don't want to deal any elemental damage anyway. You can also try getting a corrupted one with an increase to damage over time or a chance to grant you the Unholy Might buff. If you feel comfortable with your damage, you can use this wand instead. The explosions will greatly improve your clear speed, and they can chain from each other. With Corrupted Implicit you can get power charge generation. Dendrabate is a great early game body armor that grants you tons of damage if you are able to fulfill the attribute requirements. It is quite cheap, so you can look for corruption for additional gem levels, and link it using the tainted currency. Azenith's Gentle Touch is the best in slot pair of gloves. It automatically applies the Temporal Chain's curse, blinds enemies, and causes corpses to explode for extra damage. Optionally they can be corrupted to inflict despair too, but it will be the weaker version than a proper self-casted curse. Ungil's Harmony grants absurd amounts of critical strike chance, and the downside doesn't affect this build in the slightest. You can use critical catalysts to push the crit chance up to 420%. Ming's Heart grants you an insane amount of extra chaos damage, especially when you use Chaos Catalyst to make the bonus 20% stronger. In return it lowers your maximum life significantly, so your goal is to get enough damage elsewhere to avoid using this ring in the end. This ring significantly buffs your physical damage when you are using the Herald of Purity, but be careful, as it has many combinations of mods. You can also use the Circle of Nostalgia for the same set of modifiers with Herald of Agony, so pick one that has better synthesis modifiers or a lower price. It is a very cheap ring that grants a decent amount of damage, and allows you to inflict chill. It also boosts your global chance of poison, which includes corpse explosions. By default, it gives you plenty of dexterity, and with the correct seed, it can grant you tons of useful modifiers such as maximum life, poison damage, onslaught on kill, or better flask sustain. With the return of Sanctum, we can utilize this unique jewel once again. It automates the Wither application, which allows you to skip using the spell totem setup. A Malevolence Watcher's Eye is one of the best jewels for this build. It grants up to over 20% chaos damage over time multiplier, which is hard to replace with any other jewel. At the later stages, you can borrow some useful notables from other Shadows ascendancies. For damage, there is only the famous Polymath notable from Trickster, but getting defensive ones such as Born in the Shadows, Mistwalker, or One Step Ahead is a good choice as well. Offensively, you should focus on physical gem levels, damage over time multiplier, chaos damage, and poison duration. The spell damage does nothing for poisons, so try to avoid it. Defensively, just try to get as much maximum life as you can, but spell suppression or physical damage taken as elemental is also good. Try to use bases that grant you evasion rating as well as energy shield, which you need to cast your spells. If you need more defense, you can use a rare shield with life and a high block chance. It could also have elemental resistances or spell suppression. You can also get some damage here, with the bonus to gem levels, spell critical strike chance, or effect of your curses. At first it can be a plain helmet with life and resistance. Later on, try to get mana reservation efficiency and improved effect of your temporal chain curse. It could also lower nearby enemies' chaos resistance. You should craft a focus mod that improves the duration of your ailments. On your rare boots you should primarily look for high bonus life and movement speed, then just try to add missing resistances, attributes, and possibly chaos resistance. You can get extra speed from the onslaught on kill or action speed modifiers. Regular rare gloves can be focused on defensive modifiers such as high maximum life, spell suppression, life regeneration, or lacking resistances. You can still get a bit of damage via influence modifiers, and you can get the curse application via corrupted implicit. A proper rare armor can provide you with similar levels of damage, but also improve your defenses. For damage look for gem levels, frenzy charge generation, and additional curse. Then you can get maximum and increased life, physical damage reduction or taken as elemental, life regeneration, or block and spell suppression chances. On your rare belt you can get tons of life and resistances. It should always be a Stygian Vice base, as it allows you to use extra Abyss Jewel. You can also get some increased chaos damage bonus, but it will raise the price considerably. Flasks modifiers are also very useful to have. Here you should look for maximum life, lacking resistances, or attributes. Chance to gain phasing on kill is also very useful. Damage-wise, look for increased damage over time modifiers or added flat physical or chaos damage for your spells. You can also use a rare ring that will grant you a decent amount of damage, but also provide you with necessary maximum life or resistance modifiers. For damage, you can use Essence Crafted Damage over Time Multiplier, Minimum Frenzy Charge, or just an increased Chaos Damage modifier. Your jewels can provide you with a mix of defense and offense. Aim to always have maximum life here, as well as some poison damage, damage over time multiplier, or resistances and attributes. You can also get flask duration or mana reservation efficiency here. Eventually you will run out of efficient passives on the passive skill tree, and you will have to resort to cluster jewels instead. There are quite a few useful notables to get, and the differences in their power are not that great. The chaos damage clusters provide slightly less damage than physical ones, but their notables can give you useful utility instead. Those are even more efficient than large clusters, all thanks to the Circling Oblivion notable, which increases the duration of your poisons. You should back it up with the Flow of Life notable to get both damage and maximum life, but you can use any other useful notable you can find. Sin's Rebirth will grant you the Unholy Might buff on demand, which is very powerful for this build. It grants you 30% extra chaos damage based on your physical damage. Coralito's signature is a diamond flask, so it naturally boosts your critical strike chance, and it also adds an extra damage over time multiplier for your poisons inflicted with critical strikes. It slowly drains your life during the effect, but it is nothing too serious. For your remaining magic flasks we suggest using Life Flask with bleeding removal, Quicksilver with critical strike chance bonus, and a Jade Flask with evasion rating bonus. Blade Vortex summons up to 10 blades orbiting around you, dealing more physical damage for each blade you have summoned. You should also use the Vol version with a summons an independent vortex of blades. The Unleash support provides no damage boost, but is essential to make the gameplay smooth. All support gems except for efficacy have awakened versions, which will considerably boost your damage. Grace is your main defensive aura. It grants you tons of flat evasion rating and boosts it even further. Purity of Elements grants you plenty of elemental resistances and provides immunity to all elemental ailments. You can also use the Determination aura to get some armor, but it won't be very effective here. Herald of Purity boosts your physical damage and creates useful minions which can tank a few hits for you. This Herald grants you poison chance and improves your damage with poisons. The Divergent quality buffs your global poison chance even further. Defiance Banner improves your evasion rating and lowers the enemy critical strike chance. It has rather low priority, so use it only if you have enough mana to spare. You will need the Enlightened support and some mana reservation efficiency on your gear to use all those auras. Both heralds give a similar amount of damage, so it is up to you which one you want to skip. Malevolence is the best aura for damage over time in terms of pure offense. Not only it boosts your damage, but it also increases the duration of all your effects, so the Blade Vortex stacks last longer. You should use it with Divine Blessing support as a temporary buff. You will need plenty of energy shield to use it. You can keep the Blessing gem level at 1 to lower the mana cost or support it with the Inspiration gem. Wither inflict a powerful debuff on the enemy. It increases the chaos damage they take and can stack up to 15 times. To quickly apply all stacks you should use a spell totem setup. It will die rather quickly, so try to place it at a safe distance from enemies. Plague Bearer stores part of your poison damage up to a limit. You can release it to deal a fixed amount of damage around your character within a few seconds. It can't be improved with regular support gems. It has a rather small area of effect, so it is worth increasing it with a support gem. The damage of this spell is limited by its gem level, so using Empower support is the only way to boost it. Despair lowers the chaos resistances of affected foes, which increases the poison damage they take in the result. Higher levels of this gem will reduce the chaos resistances more. Temporal Chain slows the enemy down, and makes all effects last longer on them. Ideally, it should be applied via your gloves automatically. Higher gem levels don't matter here as much. Flame Dash is your main movement spell. It teleports you in a short distance and can store up to 3 charges. You can also use the Whirling Blades if you use only the Cold Iron Point daggers. The Withering Step grants you the elusive buff which improves your movement speed, and applies withering stacks to nearby enemies. It shares cooldown with the Flame Dash. Steelskin is the best guard skill for this build. It grants you plenty of additional shield and disables bleeding effects. It will require a lot of strength to use it at max gem level. This golem will grant you a bit of sustain via life regeneration. You can also use it with the new Guardian's Blessing support for the Malevolent setup, but it might be too annoying to maintain on dangerous maps. In the second act, kill all bandits to get additional 2 passive skill points, as the build is very starved for them. For your major Pantheon power, we recommend using Soul of Solaris, which grants you a bit of physical damage reduction and a decent chance to have the damage of area attacks. The minor Pantheon power is very flexible. We suggest using the Soul of Ralakesh, which makes the bleeding effects much less scary. You can level up this character easily with Blade Vortex. At first, you should focus on the hit portion of this spell, but as you progress you can experiment when the poison starts to work better. The critical strike scaling isn't that effective until you have all pieces together, so there is no need to rush it. You will have plenty of useful notables to get anyway. You should prioritize the poison chance notables, and take the maximum life and spell suppression nodes on your way there. The Eldritch Battery Keystone is very useful, as it allows you to reserve 100% of your mana and freely spam your abilities. The Assassin Ascendancy grants you tons of poison duration and heavily rewards you for inflicting them with critical strikes. It also nearly guarantees critical strikes against enemies on low life, which means below 50% of their maximum life. The Brutal Restraint is very helpful when you lack the dexterity for the Dendrobate armor. You will need external tools such as the Path of Building to find one with good additional modifiers. The Cluster Jewel setup is very efficient here. It will obviously cost some money to obtain, so you can invest your passives into Maximum Life or Flask notables in the meanwhile, and refund them once you get your jewels. That's all for today's video. We hope you enjoyed it. If so, please leave a like or subscribe, and see you in the next video.